perspective?
Well, I think there's always a danger, and I think the point about the archetypes is they're timeless. Archetype means timeless. So, okay, we're in modernity. These issues aren't new. I think there's just an extraordinary consistency, and I think in a way the challenge is finding who you are. I think the first task, people say consumer first, brand second. I think that's rubbish. We go inside first, find out who you are, then outside in, into the culture. How does this archetype find its expression in modernity? What are the contemporary issues? And I think there's a sort of ethical question for any brand team. You know, are you doing it in a way that uplifts and enriches? And I think, you know, I personally like to work on brands that are uplifting. I think these same myths and stories can be used to divide and pull people apart, and I think Trump and Farage have done it, and it's working on the same energy that Domestos worked on. Scare someone, and then you've got them in your hand. So I think it's a difficult issue. What I do think is once you know the archetype, some of this trend stuff is irrelevant for you. You know, it may be that you need to do stuff, but the point is you're looking at culture from the perspective of the archetype. I don't know whether that's helpful.
We've been talking about this before we came here today, and it was something that we both agreed on, that, you know, I mean, I come at it from a basis of production more so than marketing and advertising, because that's my skill set. And to me, sometimes to see stuff that is very authentic, which Sandy would probably describe as being the archetype of the brand, but we both kind of came to the same conclusion at the end of the day, that if you're authentic, therefore archetypal to your brand, then therefore the trend stuff that's coming out is irrelevant, because, you know, you don't have to jump on the bandwagon to make yourself relevant to the people that you're trying to engage with. And unfortunately, I think a lot of brands, and not necessarily just in Ireland, I think globally, a lot of brands are just jumping on bandwagons all the time now. And it's not the way to do it. You must have consistency and bravery to be able to bring your brand to where you want to get it to, so that it really engages and connects with people. And that means thinking about what you're doing and not worrying about what the competitors are doing or what the competition is doing, and not worrying about being trend-setted, you know.
One of the things you realise when you look at brand history reels is how unbelievably inconsistent brands are. They do not take a diachronic through time perspective. They are so promiscuous with the archetypes they sleep with. And so, yeah, Barry?
Sorry, just on that point, I was a brand manager for a few years once in my career. When I joined this company, the purchasing manager said to me, so you're going to be here for 2 years, when are you going to change the packaging?
Yeah.
And I changed the packaging, but I stayed for 3 years. And then the next person that would have followed me would have changed packaging. And that's the whole problem, I think, with consistency, or lack of consistency within companies, and therefore lack of consistency in communication and marketing.
No, that's absolutely core. Byron Sharp is one message, is stay consistent to the archetype. The problem is the new brand team come in, change everything. The past is rubbish. You know, we're now in a digital area, everything's rubbish. So it's hugely different. And I think Beulah and I, going through reels and reels of advertising, you just get the perspective of how inconsistent. They don't stay on archetype. They don't even know. And at times they've done brilliant work 20, 30 years ago. And then they pour it down the drain with 20 years of rubbish. And then you find they remember 20 years ago, Big Dom. Some people even remember it and they weren't even born, because they picked it up on social media or watched it.
I saw a talk in Berlin at a craft festival that's for production called Cyclope, which travels around the world. It's in Europe, it's in Berlin, and it's also in South Africa, and it's also in South America. There was a presentation with, I think it was Aldi, it was definitely a German brand, and they have had the same advertising agency for over 30 years. And they have a relationship where it is their advertising agency and the brand marketing team, and they persist through it, and they don't put the work out to pitch. They just keep going. Everybody knows what the brand stands for, what it is they want to say. There's a relationship of trust between the advertising agency and the client. And I think that's a big part of possibly what's going on with the promiscuity that Sandy's talking about in some respects. That the promiscuity means that we don't have trust, and that, this is an industry that is based on relationships between ourselves and then based on the relationships we have with our consumers. And if we could all get back to that, I think this island actually could do some amazing work. We've done some amazing work in the past, and we are still doing some amazing work, but we could do more, and we could do better, and we could be much more a centre of excellence for our industry than London is, because London, quite frankly, I deal with them a lot at the minute, they're falling apart.
Yeah. I was actually shocked at looking at Max's things about how little has changed. So, Ireland, do a Conor McGregor in the advertising.
Any other questions?
Not a Conor McGregor, no.
Yeah, go on to the question.
Sorry, just a second.
In relation to your saying one of the four thunders was today's culture is an oral culture. How do you think that sits with today's culture when everything is Instagram? It's a very visual culture, and people seem to be talking less to each other.
Yeah, in a way it was a simplification. It's actually an oral visual culture. And I agree with you. But the oral stuff on Instagram, etc., the most effective of it is narrative based. So it is a narrative oral culture. But the principles of orality are really useful to learn because they're all about memory. And what the bulk of people are in FMCG, the point is that you're walking down a supermarket, 30 to 50,000 SKUs. What causes you to remember that Domestos, wow, Sophie, my daughter, is threatened? And the fact that Tesco bleach is 30% cheaper and exactly the same formulation, I don't care, because you scared me that my daughter Sophie, and that's just unthinkable not to do the best for the person I brought into the world. That's how it works. So I think it's an oral visual. But given that Ireland had oral for 1,000 years longer than the rest of Western Europe, it's closer to its oral traditions. And when the monks came, they wrote that oral tradition down. So Ireland, if you're interested, bard mythologies, we spent the last 20 years looking at these extraordinary myths and legends of Ireland. Ireland is unique because the Romans never got here. So if Ireland were to take this Joycean stuff, its own rich oral tradition, which is still alive in the west of Ireland to a certain extent, it could potentially play a huge force for good. And that's why I think a renaissance of brand is potential. And why not? Let's have a go.
Great. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Barry now, who's going to wrap up.
Yeah.
Bang on 10 o'clock.
And very, very quickly, it's just really to say thanks very much to Sandy and to Max for some very thought-provoking presentations. I thought they were absolutely excellent. Thanks to Dentsu Aegis for the use of their offices, and to Paul below for his tech support as always. And thanks also to Core, who also give us their offices as well. That's about it. Thanks very much for coming along. April the 2nd is our next stage. We will have Patrick Hickey from Rothko, who this time last year sold their agency to Accenture. So we'll have a Q&A session and a panel discussion with the people from Rothko, which proves to be very interesting. So don't miss that one. Thanks again for coming along and enjoy the weekend.